Joining me now is Admiral James Stavridis, CNN senior military analyst, former NATO Supreme Allied Commander. Thank you so much for being here. I want to run through, Admiral, some of the recent reporting, some of the recent developments, including what I just made reference to, that these two individuals may have been waving toward the sky. What do you make of that development?
I think it hurts the case that we had authority to simply kill them while they're floating in the water. Hey, let's back up for 1 minute. Why do we want to hold ourselves to these kind of standards? I think there's a moral imperative to do so. I think there's legal imperatives, Geneva Conventions, laws of war. I keep coming back to the intelligence, Michael. You just laid out beautifully why we ought to stop these drug runners. A pretty good way to start would be, for example, to have captured these two, to have taken the intelligence from them, to have interrogated them. You can then drop a plumb line back to the routes, possibly all the way up to Maduro. All of that is an opportunity to reverse engineer the supply routes that you talk about. And then lastly, you know, as a former commander, and by the way, I was commander of U.S. Southern Command, in charge of all these kind of operations for 3 years. I always think about reciprocity. If those were my Navy SEALs floating in the water, I would want them afforded the opportunity to surrender. So I think there's a lot of good reasons we ought to, as you say, pull this one apart. If we did something wrong, admit it, talk about it, and apply it so that we can continue to reverse engineer and kill the drugs, but also do the right thing as a military.
I'm trying to analyze all the details from different news reports in the absence, obviously, of the video. So there's the waving report. There's the fact that there's no satellite phone apparent in the hands of these two individuals. There's that account from the Times that the survivors were shirtless, clung to the hole, tried unsuccessfully to flip it back over, then climbed on it and slipped off into the water over and over. And as you well know, Admiral, the law in this circumstance relative to that DOD manual specifically cites shipwreck as an instance where you can't take action.
It does. And neither you nor I can make an informed judgment here because you're showing the only piece of evidence that we can actually look at with our own eyes. To your earlier point, there needs to be not only transparency with the videos, we do need to see that second video that you're describing from various media reports, but we also need to see the transcripts. I want to hear the audio. I'd like to see the JAG who was in the room with Admiral Bradley under oath talk about what he or she said to the Admiral. When I led the campaign against Libya in 2011, I had a JAG next to me essentially every time we dropped a bomb because you want to avoid collateral damage. You want to ensure you don't end up in that cell next to Rodrigo Duterte, the former president of the Philippines, in The Hague. So bottom line, we need to have what lawyers would call a time of discovery here, and then make the judgments without fear or favor as to what happened on that day.
Admiral Stavridis, I think you're also highlighting another important aspect of this, which is that initially when the reports were made, as a layperson, I thought that this was some type of an instantaneous decision. The CNN reporting points out that there was a 41-minute deliberative process. So thought went into this, and I'm trying to be eminently fair to Admiral Bradley in this case. And as you pointed out, he relied on some legal justification.
He absolutely did. And by the way, Admiral Mitch Bradley has an absolutely sterling reputation in the military generally and in his community. My very good friend, Admiral Bill McRaven, has spoken to that quite recently. So again, and I'm sure Admiral Bradley would agree with this, let's have a thorough investigation. The question, I think, Michael, is who's going to do it? There's no IG in the Pentagon. He was fired. There are no senior JAGs. They were all fired. I think it's really up to the Congress. And I'm watching very close. We've heard from a variety of people on the Hill. That's fine. The two people I want to hear from are the chairman and ranking member of the Senate Armed Services Committee, the senior oversight body over the military. That would be Senator Jack Reed, who is a West Point graduate, straight as an arrow. And the other is the chairman, Roger Wicker, who is a former Air Force, wait for it, JAG officer, retired lieutenant colonel. I want to hear from those two. I want them to investigate this. If it's done behind closed doors, that's fine, but we need a thorough investigation.
Okay, let me say that you are my North Star, and McRaven, the two of you together, you're the gold standard. So when I saw that Admiral McRaven said, in the 30 years that I have known Mitch, meaning Admiral Bradley, he has always displayed a strong moral compass, impeccable character, someone that I trust to do the right thing under even the most difficult of, that causes me to say, back off, give the man the benefit of the doubt, and let's see the way this plays out. I want to say one more thing, though, in light of what you just offered. It's so frustrating for me that this has become a Rorschach test because you've not seen it, I've not seen it, but congressional leaders have. And then, Admiral, they walk out of the room and all the Republicans say one thing and all the Democrats. And I just look for an individual of courage, like one Republican to say, damn, I was really troubled by what I saw. Or a Democrat who would say, you know, Admiral Bradley was in a really difficult spot and seems to have done the right thing. But instead, there's no independent thinking. Your thoughts?
I go back to those two individuals, Jack Reed, Roger Wicker. These are two, you use the expression North Star. That's very kind. These are two individuals I look up to for their standards. I've heard both of them cross the aisle in viewpoints. Let's wait and see what they have to say about this in the days ahead. This is not going to go away as an issue.
Admiral James Stavridis, we appreciate you always, former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO.